faithfully delivering value, exploring great books worldwide. Hello, this is Sally here to talk books. Today, I'm introducing this book by the British Edward Gibbon, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. It tells the story of the Roman Empire from its peak to its downfall. Translated into Chinese, it's nearly 4 million words, 8 times the length of Records of the Grand Historian, 5 times that of Book of Han, and even surpasses Comprehensive Mirror for Aid in Government by nearly 1 million words. So, why is the rise and fall of the Roman Empire worth such extensive writing? We say that the rise and fall of empires happen all over the world, but the Roman Empire's status is kind of special. There are 2 reasons for this. First, after Rome, no one ever unified the Mediterranean region again. In the eyes of Westerners, ancient Rome seems almost mythical in this regard. So, before the modern era, Roman history was always a focal point for the Western world. Second, the decline of the Roman Empire was a very long process. Today's book, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, covers from the 2nd century AD, during the empire's peak, to the 15th century, when the Eastern Roman capital, Constantinople, was captured by the Turks. This spans 13 centuries. In Chinese history terms, it starts from the Eastern Han Dynasty and goes all the way to the mid-Ming Dynasty. Such a massive research project took Gibbon 20 years to complete, resulting in 6 volumes and 71 chapters. Besides the main theme of the Roman Empire, the book also describes many neighboring regions and peoples. For mastering such a complex historical context, Gibbon holds a special place among historians. In English-speaking countries, no history book carries the weight of The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, nor does any historian. No Roman historian has had as enduring and widespread influence as Gibbon. Next, I'll first talk about how Rome rose, and then discuss 3 reasons for its decline. Finally, we'll specifically discuss why this book became a classic. First, let's learn how Rome rose. In the 4th century BC, when Aristotle wrote Politics, he examined hundreds of city-states around Greece, but never mentioned Rome. 100 years later, a republic called Rome suddenly rose to become the dominant power on the Italian peninsula. Another 100 years passed, and the legions of this republic marched out of the peninsula, becoming invincible. By the 1st century BC, which corresponds to China's Western Han period, Rome gradually conquered all regions around the Mediterranean. The legions of the Roman Republic were known for their bravery, aggression, and brutality. After defeating all opponents, they started meddling in Roman politics, and generals with military power began slaughtering each other. At the end of the 2nd century BC, civil wars broke out repeatedly, lasting about 100 years. Amidst the fighting, someone who would completely transform Rome emerged. He was Octavian, the nephew of Caesar, the famous Roman politician we all know. In 27 BC, Octavian emerged victorious in the Civil War. He founded the Roman Empire and maintained unity around the Mediterranean for 400 years. During these 4 centuries, the first 200 were largely stable, hailed as an unparalleled golden age. We Chinese often say, blessings harbor misfortune. The first cause of the Roman Empire's fall is closely tied to the imperial system that brought it prosperity and stability. The decline and fall of the Roman Empire begins with the empire's peak in the 2nd century AD. But to grasp the imperial system's origins and workings, we need to delve deeper. The century before Octavian, the founding emperor of Rome, established the imperial system is called the era of the Roman Revolution. In Latin, revolution means new things. 2,000 years ago, the shift from the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire was truly an unprecedented new scenario for Romans at the time. The Republic emerged in Italy not because it was advanced, but because it was primitive. As a peninsula extending into the Mediterranean, Mountainous Italy has poor soil, rugged terrain, no major rivers for connection, and scattered villages and towns. The city-states that arose in this environment were somewhat more advanced than tribal chiefdoms, but in scale, they were only the size of small town governments. They typically centered around a small town with market trade controlling just a few surrounding hills and villages. Under this governance, officials were part-time, just enthusiastic folks willing to step up and handle matters for everyone. Its military was militia-based. Farmers dropped their hoes, took up weapons, and became warriors. The weapons, like farm tools, had to be provided by the recruits themselves, and the economy wasn't wealthy. Nobles, essentially rich farmers, rolled up their pant legs, gladly armed themselves for the fields, brave in battle, with no desire for cushy living. So, a legion of a few hundred to 1,000 men was considered a large army, fitting easily on a single threshing ground. The Roman city-state practiced a republican system, most notably without monarchy, dominated by nobles with several great families competing. In small towns with limited populations, aspiring to kingship wasn't easy to begin with. While Rome had additional institutional safeguards against one-person dominance, its highest officials were consuls, two specifically for mutual checks, annually elected. Everyone had governing opportunities, with retired officials forming the Senate. Consuls needed Senate approval, while major issues required citizen assemblies for discussion and voting. Those who could fight were voting citizens, preserving primitive direct democracy. Rome's republic functioned well during Italian peninsula expansion. It reconciled factional disputes and wealth gaps, inspired campaign enthusiasm, fairly shared war spoils, incorporated neighbors, and continuously expanded. But when legions marched beyond the peninsula, serious problems emerged. Consuls leading distant campaigns couldn't complete missions in just 3 to 5 years. Given transportation limitations, field generals acted autonomously beyond Senate control. Soldiers fighting together for years became commanders' private forces, who became military strongmen, ignoring the government. Conflicts between regional commanders couldn't be resolved by Senate meetings or voting, making civil war inevitable. In essence, the small city-states republic couldn't handle a vast empire's politics. By the Civil War's end, victorious Octavian was the sole military strongman with absolute power potential, yet he still respected Rome's anti-monarchy tradition. After his uncle Caesar won the Civil War, he seemed poised to become king. He was ultimately stabbed to death during a Senate meeting. Learning from this, Octavian softened his approach, repeatedly vowing to uphold republicanism, showing Senate respect, and having major policies approved by nobles. Though everyone knew discussions were just discussions, whether policies passed, well, the senators' opinions no longer mattered. Retaining the Senate was merely symbolic respect. What Octavian actually did was consolidate military power in his own hands. Soldiers pledged allegiance to him, and military pay and rewards were issued in his name. He arranged land allocations and settlement funds upon retirement, and personally appointed officer positions. With such a power base, titles became less important. He never claimed to be king or emperor, nor underwent a coronation ceremony. The authority he held was called imperium in Latin, and the holder was imperator. Translating it as emperor is a bit off. Commander-in-chief might be more fitting. The Senate recognized him as Augustus, meaning revered one, not like a monarch. Common people simply called him Caesar, because he was adopted by Caesar as a son and later used Caesar as his surname. And later, even with dynastic changes, rulers often styled themselves as Augustus or Caesar. Overall, the Roman imperial system had a deceptive quality, and given directly called Octavian a deceptive tyrant. Depending on his needs, he could be Rome's enemy or later its founding father. Octavian's success wasn't due to his deception skills. After a century of civil strife, Rome needed recovery. The Senate nobles knew well that Octavian was a dictator, but the republican system at that time meant Roman legions slaughtering each other. Many noble families were wiped out in brutal political struggles, and survivors had accepted the dictator's reality. To the dictator's dictator, outside Italy, around the Mediterranean, the imperial system brought rare peace. When the Roman army conquered these places, they were indeed very brutal. Wherever legions went, they burned, killed, looted, razed cities, and slaughtered locals. Such things were commonplace. After the imperial system was implemented, Roman legions shifted from eager plundering to professional defense forces on the frontiers, paid by the state. Fighting ceased everywhere. As long as taxes were paid to the empire, there was no more bloodshed. By the 2nd century, Rome saw 5 good emperors in succession. Their era was called the Antonine dynasty. Imperial succession involved emperors adopting capable generals as sons, ensuring smooth transitions. The empire's bureaucracy operated stably. Nobles everywhere adapted to peace benefits, and outer borders gradually stabilized. Gibbon's book starts right from here. In the 2nd century AD, the Roman Empire covered the finest regions and most civilized parts of humanity. Under imperial rule, vast lands were protected by wise and disciplined armies, laws, and customs. Though gentle, it had a powerful influence, gradually uniting regions into one, with peaceful residents enjoying the wealth and luxury left by their ancestors. Republicanism appeared respected, and the Senate seemed to hold sovereignty, but real power was entirely in the emperor's hands. Gibbon wrote about the empire's decline first by pinpointing its peak period. Amidst this prosperity, he sensed the scent of imperial decline. Gibbon's understanding of history inherited the humanistic tradition, rooted in reading Latin classics. During the Republican era, Roman nobles competed for offices and command, dominating city-state politics. Medieval Europe was a feudal, fragmented political system. Though completely different from Roman city-states, power was also scattered among nobles, ruling their own domains. Entering the modern era, Europe engaged in continuous warfare, gradually emerging from feudalism, with kings promoting centralization. These kings seized nobles' privileges and intensified taxation. In response, dissatisfied nobles often used slogans of defending freedom and opposing tyranny to resist. In Latin classics, descriptions of Roman nobles opposing monarchical dominance greatly appealed to European nobles. From Gibbon's tone, it's easy to see he had reservations about Roman imperialism. With reservations. This is because the system Gibbon advocated required both order and rational freedom. Under the republican system, Rome lacked order, leading to widespread chaos. Under the imperial system, Rome restored order, but the emperor grabbed all power, ignored the Senate, and only maintained a facade of freedom. During the Antonine dynasty, the Roman Empire entered its golden age. The monarch's absolute power was held by wise emperors and not abused. But that was only due to the emperor's personal character. Future monarchs with different temperaments inevitably turned to tyranny, leading the empire to decline. In Gibbon's view, the imperial system enabled Rome's golden age, but suppressed people's spiritual vitality, becoming a key cause of its later decline. After covering the first cause of imperial decline, let's now examine the second major cause, the challenge from barbarians. Since the founding Emperor Octavian, Roman emperors were mostly battle-hardened soldiers. Imperial military campaigns frequently appear in historical records, giving the impression of ruling from horseback. Well, there are 2 reasons for this. One is the foundation of imperial power. It lies in unified military command, and the other is the Roman Empire's heavy defense burden. In the north, Rome had 2 boundaries, the Rhine River, the other is the Danube River, together stretching 4,000 kilometers. northway uncivilized lands occupying most of Europe, the domain of Germanic barbarians, the barbarians' domain. To the east, the Roman border reached Mesopotamia, between modern Iraq and Syria. There, two powers confronted: Rome versus Persian regimes, first Parthian Empire, later Sasanian dynasty. Heavy defenses required a massive army. Rome's frontier troops peaked at 500,000, consuming 70% of imperial expenditures. An army this size wouldn't reappear until Napoleon's wars, a millennium later. The Persian standoff was state-to-state confrontation. Army deployments were visible, opponents clear, fighting when possible, negotiating territorial concessions, reparations, or marriages when not. But the northern frontiers had no clear opponent. Germanic barbarians were tribal societies occupying vast territories. Their presence stretched from Western Europe to Ukraine, loosely organized, appearing and vanishing like ghosts. Even during the Republic, they troubled Rome. After Octavian founded the empire, troops crossing the Rhine were ambushed by barbarians, losing 3 legions, tens of thousands of men. Gibbon devoted an entire chapter to Germanic tribes, drawing from ancient Roman sources. To Romans, barbarians lacked writing, didn't farm, lived by hunting or gathering. Their small settlements had no government, wealth measured in livestock or timber. Dwellings were huts. They worshipped celestial bodies. They practiced human sacrifice. Captured Roman soldiers sometimes became offerings. Romans expressed clear contempt for their primitive lifestyle, but he greatly admired these simple barbarians, daring to fight mighty Rome to the death for freedom, honor, and independence. In contrast, Roman nobles showed no interest in battlefield glory, rarely engaged in politics, privately enjoying leisure and pleasures. Back then, Roman citizens were diligent and frugal, serving in the military with unmatched dedication to defend homes and freedom. By the imperial period, nobles were corrupted by luxury and civilization, struggling against barbarian invasions. After the Antonine dynasty, the 3rd century AD brought crises to Rome, giving Gibbon abundant historical material. Among these, imperial succession remained problematic. Praetorian Guard coups and legion revolts sparked civil wars. Emperors changed like a revolving lantern, mostly from military camps, most dying by sword within years. To appease legions, emperors massively increased military spending, causing fiscal crisis, hyperinflation, and economic decline. Octavian's greatest imperial achievement was establishing unified peace. But now the empire suffered frequent civil strife, even splitting into 3 parts at its worst. Amid internal chaos, border defenses collapsed. Northern barbarians invaded deep into territory. Persian forces strengthened, erasing Rome's military edge. Near the 4th century AD, stability returned and the empire reunified, but economically devastated. Diocletian, another military man, brought revival. He realized Rome's borders were overextended, from Rhine to Danube to modern Iraq or Syria, with restless troops. One man couldn't manage it. So he split the empire. He governed the east, another emperor the west, beginning Rome's east-west division. Later, even 2 emperors proved insufficient, so he added deputies to each, creating the Tetrarchy. Clearly, imperial politics couldn't bear the burden of governing the entire Mediterranean region. To rally popular support, Emperor Diocletian emphasized restoring Rome's religious traditions. At this point, the empire encountered an even thornier enemy: Christianity, which Gibbon considered a cause of Rome's decline. The third reason,